Greetings, Petrolheads. After the dramatic conclusion of 1956, with its heartbreaks, heroics, and history in the making, we now turn the page to a brand new chapter. It's 1957, a year of bold ambitions, evolving machines, and legendary names on the rise. This year, the World Championship takes us across the globe, from the summer heat of Argentina to the tight twists of Monaco, through the winding roads of France, and the speed temple of Britain, the thunder of the Nürburgring, all the way to not one, but two Italian Grand Prix, with the United States joining the calendar once again. Juan Fangio stands as the man to beat, but challengers are closing in. One thing is certain, we'll be right there with you, race by race, moment by moment. To all our returning subscribers, you know the sound, the smell, and the stories. It's time once again to fire up those engines. And if you're new here, you've just joined a passionate community that lives and breathes Formula One history. You're in good company. So strap in, because the story of the 1957 Formula One World Championship is about to begin. In a scene almost unthinkable by today's Formula One standards, the 1957 season saw an incredible variety in engine design, layout, and philosophy. From brute force to compact innovation, the paddock was a mechanical battlefield of ideas. At the forefront were the mighty Italians. Maserati brought not one, but two weapons to the grid: the proven straight six and the newly developed high-revving V12. Ferrari countered with its formidable V8, tuned to extract close to 290 horsepower, ferocious by the standards of the day. Meanwhile, the British constructors had to approach things differently. BRM, Connaught, Cooper, and Van Wall all opted for smaller, lightweight straight-four engines. These were not nearly as powerful, often trailing the Italians by a considerable margin in sheer horsepower. But they were nimble, reliable, and easier on tyres and fuel, a potential equalizer over long Grand Prix distances. Despite these contrasts in engine architecture, almost every car on the 1957 grid shared one common trait: front engine layout. It was the dominant ideology of the era, all except one. Cooper, the quiet revolutionaries from Surbiton, continued to challenge convention with a rear-mounted engine layout. Small, underpowered, but brilliantly balanced, it was a concept still ahead of its time, but not for long. The diversity of technology in 1957 reflected the uncertainty of Formula One's future. But one thing was certain: change was coming. Most of the field in 1957 shared a familiar set of specifications, standard, proven, and widely accepted at the time. Space frame chassis construction was the norm, paired with conventional front-mounted water-cooled radiators. Suspension setups followed a similar pattern too: double wishbones at the front and a DD-on axle at the rear, offering just enough precision and stability for the demands of the era. Feeding the engines were Weber carburetors, reliable, well understood, and dominant across most teams. But one name stood apart: Van Wall. Backed by British engineering ambition, and with crucial assistance from Daimler-Benz and Bosch, Van Wall became the first team to truly perfect fuel injection in Formula One. While others relied on carburetors, Van Wall's fuel-injected system delivered cleaner throttle response, improved fuel economy, and a crucial edge in performance, an innovation that hinted at the future of racing technology. But there were clear differences too: technical battle lines drawn across the field. One of the most defining was in braking systems. The newly developed disc brakes were beginning to challenge the conventional drum brake setups. At this point in history, both systems were still going head-to-head. Traditionalists like Maserati and Ferrari continued to rely on the tried and tested drum brakes, robust and familiar, but their days were clearly numbered. The future was knocking, and the disc brake's superior cooling and stopping power would soon become undeniable. Gearboxes also revealed the wide spectrum of mechanical thinking in 1957. Ferrari introduced state-of-the-art 5-speed gearboxes, giving their drivers a broader range of ratios to play with, especially valuable on twisty circuits. In contrast, Maserati and BRM stuck with more traditional 4-speed units, simple and dependable. Then there were the Connaught cars, which featured the curious pre-selector gearboxes, a somewhat outdated yet charmingly complex solution that still had its moments of effectiveness. Aerodynamic design took its first serious steps in 1957, thanks largely to one man, Colin Chapman. With Van Wall, Chapman spearheaded a quiet revolution in car shaping. He refined the nose cowling for smoother airflow, optimized underbonnet ventilation, raised the cockpit sides for better streamlining, and introduced compact perspex windshields to reduce drag. But the true innovation lay elsewhere. Van Wall was the first Formula One team to make serious use of a full-scale wind tunnel, an engineering leap that set them apart. Amazingly, this forward-thinking approach was largely ignored by the traditional giants. Neither Maserati nor Ferrari paid much attention to aerodynamics. In fact, while wind tunnels were being used in Italy, they weren't by car manufacturers, but by Moto Guzzi, who employed them to fine-tune their world-class racing motorcycles. It was an ironic twist. The technology was in reach, but only the most daring chose to grasp it. As we've seen, the machines of 1957 varied wildly. Different engines, gearboxes, brakes, and aerodynamic approaches. But in one crucial aspect, they were all exactly the same. Not a single thought was given to driver protection. Safety was a distant afterthought, if it was considered at all. Every inch of development focused on speed, on performance, on shaving tenths of a second, even if it meant putting the driver's life on the line. These cars were fast, furious, and unforgiving. This was the reality of Formula One in the 1950s, wild, raw, and merciless. And to survive it, let alone race in it, the drivers needed more than talent. They needed nerve, resolve, and a fearlessness most of us can't begin to imagine. And so begins the story of 1957. The theater of Formula One is open again. The 1957 Formula One World Championship kicks off beneath the sweltering sun of Buenos Aires. Once again, Argentina opens the season, a tradition now firmly established, offering fans a thunderous return to the world of motorsport after months of winter silence. The venue is none other than the Autódromo Juan y Oscar Gálvez, a sprawling complex with multiple configurations. For the Grand Prix, as always, it is layout number 2, that serves as the battleground, a fast and challenging variant first introduced in 1951, blending sweeping curves and unforgiving straights. But while the track is ready, not everyone is. Just like in previous years, the early calendar date, deep in the Southern Hemisphere's summer, proved too soon for the British outfits. High shipping costs and unfinished cars meant that teams like Van Wall, BRM, and Cooper stayed home. That left the stage to the Italians. Ferrari, Maserati, and Scuderia Centro Sud were the only entries this year, turning the race into a fierce showdown of Italian engineering, and giving the home fans one more reason to cheer, as their national hero Juan Manuel Fangio would once again return to defend his crown. Scuderia Ferrari, the dominant force of the previous championship, arrived in Buenos Aires with strength in numbers and undeniable prestige. The team brought 6 of their refined Ferrari D50 machines, a proven design inherited and evolved from Lancia, now entering its 3rd competitive season. No fewer than 8 drivers were set to claim one of these scarlet machines, making Ferrari's entry the most extensive and star-studded on the grid. At the core of the team were familiar faces from the 1956 campaign: Peter Collins, the young British sensation; Mike Hawthorn, Ferrari's sharpest tactician; Eugenio Castellotti, Italy's most promising ace; and Luigi Musso, a fearless Roman with unfinished business. Supporting them were Cesare Perdisa, a smooth-handed reserve, Alfonso de Portago, the flamboyant Spaniard of noble blood, and Wolfgang von Trips, Germany's rising star. But perhaps the most stirring appearance was that of a national hero, José Froilán González, the 1954 vice-champion and a legend in Argentine motorsport. Though officially listed as a temporary addition, his presence alone stirred emotions in the grandstands. The crowd had not forgotten the Pampas Bull, and neither had Ferrari. With so much talent and experience under one banner, Ferrari had numbers, history, and horsepower on their side. But managing 8 drivers in just 6 cars would be a game of strategy from the very start. From the heart of Modena came Ferrari's fiercest rivals, Maserati, bringing both pedigree and promise to the opening round of the 1957 season. This time, the team had an unmistakably local flavor. Juan Manuel Fangio, the reigning 4-time world champion and national treasure, had returned to the Maserati fold after his championship triumph with Ferrari. Alongside him stood Carlos Menditagai, a skilled and unpredictable driver with a passion for polo and performance alike. But Maserati's strength didn't end with its Argentinians. The team also retained the services of Juan Behra, a driver known for his fiery spirit and relentless aggression. And with Van Wall absent from Buenos Aires, Stirling Moss, their intended star, found himself once again at the wheel of a Maserati, a reunion of necessity rather than design. For Fangio, Moss and Behra, the engineers had brought an updated version of the 250F, now featuring a lighter, more responsive chassis, a direct response to the ever-increasing demands of Grand Prix racing. Menditagai, however, was handed last year's model. Still, with a lineup boasting 2 of the greatest drivers in the world and a refined machine ready for battle, Maserati had every reason to believe that 1957 could begin in triumph. The third and final team to appear on the grid in Buenos Aires was none other than the ambitious privateer outfit from Modena, Scuderia Centro Sud. Founded just a year earlier, the team had quickly established itself as a home for international talent and experienced hands. Though lacking the factory muscle of Ferrari or Maserati, Centro Sud brought a diverse and intriguing lineup to Argentina. At the helm was Harry Schell, the seasoned American known for his daring attitude and adaptability. Alongside him, Joe Bonnier, the determined Swede, ready to make his mark on Formula One. Italian veteran Luigi Piotti added local familiarity to the mix, while Argentine-born newcomer Alessandro De Tomaso completed the quartet, racing in front of his home crowd. Schell and Bonnier were entrusted with Maserati 250Fs from the previous season. De Tomaso, in a curious contrast, took to the track in a heavily modified Ferrari 500, originally built in 1952 and retrofitted to meet the current 2.5-litre regulations, a blend of nostalgia and innovation. And just in case you were wondering, yes, every single car on the grid was painted red. It wasn't a team color anymore. It was practically a dress code. If you showed up in anything else, they'd probably hand you a paintbrush at the gates of Buenos Aires and say, "Nice try, mate, now make it scarlet." The very first qualifying session of the 1957 season made one thing crystal clear. Maserati's winter updates worked. Their latest 250Fs stuck to the asphalt like melted dulce de leche, and their drivers ran circles around the rest of the field, literally. Stirling Moss, still perfectly in sync with the Modena machinery, lit up the timesheets with a blistering lap. Juan Manuel Fangio had been upstaged. Second place was his, but by more than a full second. Fangio, ever the stoic, chalked it up to getting comfortable in the updated car. Behind him, John Behra made it a clean Maserati sweep of the front row, just a whisper off Fangio's time. Maserati's confidence was so high, they were probably wondering if they should have brought fewer cars and more champagne. Ferrari, on the other hand, looked more like a red blur of confusion. They showed up with a small army of drivers, but none of them cracked the top 3. Eugenio Castellotti managed to salvage fourth, though he was more than a second and a half down on pole. Collins, Musso and Hawthorne followed closely. Not close to Moss, mind you, just close to each other. Gonzalez and Perdisa just scraped into the starting grid, while De Portigo and Fontrips were benched as reserves. Menditaguy, running full tanks in what seemed like a strategic gamble for the race, claimed ninth, and Harry Schell impressed many by muscling his privateer Maserati into the top 10, even out-qualifying two Ferraris along the way. At the back, De Tomaso managed to outpace both Bonnier and Piotti, an impressive feat considering he was piloting a Ferrari built when Eisenhower was still a general. Race day in Buenos Aires arrived under a cloudless sky. It was hot, dangerously hot, the kind of heat that turns cockpits into cookers and steering wheels into branding irons. Veterans of the sport, the ones who'd survived the infamous Argentine scorcher of '55, were already sweating before they even suited up. For the newcomers, there was no escape. This was their rite of passage. No rookie ever truly arrived in Formula One until they'd finished a race in Argentina, soaked to the bones in sweat and stubbornness. The skies were clear, the sun unforgiving, and not a single cloud dared to intervene. If anyone was hoping for mercy from the weather, they clearly hadn't raced in Argentina before.
Señoras y señores, la espera ha terminado. Aquí estamos, listos para el quinto Gran Premio de Argentina, en el Autódromo Municipal, Ciudad de Buenos Aires. El rugido de los motores se mezcla con los vítores del público apasionado, ansiosos por ver a sus héroes luchar en este circuito histórico. La bandera nacional está a punto de ondear y los 14 autos están alineados en la parrilla, listos para darlo todo. Todo el trabajo, la dedicación y las largas horas de preparación ahora serán puestos a prueba bajo este calor abrasador. Pero como siempre, será la determinación y valentía de nuestros pilotos lo que marcará la diferencia.
The moment is nearly here. 100 laps, 391 kilometers, or 243 miles of relentless racing. It's a true test of endurance. Every lap will challenge the drivers, pushing them to their limits.
La emoción está al máximo. Quédense con nosotros mientras comienza esta espectacular carrera en tierras argentinas. La bandera nacional está arriba y la carrera ya ha comenzado.
As the Argentine flag sliced through the air, a thunderous roar erupted from the grid. The 1957 season was officially underway. The field surged forward in unison, but almost instantly, something was amiss. Sterling Moss, the pole sitter, stumbled off the line, his Maserati hesitating just enough to be swallowed by the chasing pack. In a blink, half the field had thundered past him. At the front, it was John Behra, who seized the moment with clinical precision, guiding his Maserati into an early lead. Hot on his heels was Eugenio Castellotti, the young Italian refusing to let Behra settle into any rhythm. And just behind, calm as ever, Juan Manuel Fangio eased his way into third. As the field completed its first lap, all eyes turned to the pit lane, where Sterling Moss coasted in, his Maserati limping, the early drama continuing. What had begun as a dream from pole had unraveled in mere moments. The British ace, stone-faced, brought the car to a halt as his mechanics swarmed the machine. By the third lap, the battle at the front had already taken a decisive turn. Eugenio Castellotti, relentless in his pursuit, had stalked John Behra with the precision of a hawk shadowing its prey. Then, with a well-timed move, he swept past the Frenchman to seize the lead. Castellotti, young and ambitious, had taken command. By the seventh tour of the Buenos Aires circuit, the internal Scuderia rivalry began to simmer. Peter Collins, having shadowed Mike Hawthorne for several laps with quiet intent, chose his moment with care. Decisive and controlled, slipping past his teammate and moving into fourth place. Behra was not one to surrender a lead without a fight. Though Castellotti had taken control earlier, the Frenchman remained close, calculated, relentless, and waiting for his moment. By lap 9, that moment came. With a measured burst of pace and a clinical move, Behra retook the lead from the Italian, reasserting Maserati's presence at the head of the field. It was clear, this would not be a race of quiet procession, but of constant pressure. On the very same lap, further down the order, a new development unfolded. Peter Collins, steadily closing the gap to Fangio, finally made his move. With a determined lunge, the Englishman slipped past the reigning world champion and climbed into third place. But if Collins hoped the job was done, he would do well to think again. Fangio, ever the master of patience and strategy, had likely read the situation 3 moves ahead. This was no defeat, merely a shift in tempo. The battle between youth and experience was only just beginning. But Collins was in full flight. Having dispatched Fangio with clinical efficiency, he set his sights on his next target, Eugenio Castellotti. Collins swept past the Italian, moving up into second place. From a quiet start, the Englishman had suddenly become the fastest man on track, and the crowd knew it. Peter Collins was quickly establishing himself as the man to watch in the opening phase of the Argentine Grand Prix. With Fangio and Castellotti already behind him, his relentless advance now brought him directly onto the tail of Behra. The Frenchman held firm at first, fending off the scarlet Ferrari with admirable nerve. But Collins was unyielding. Corner after corner, he filled Behra's mirrors, never more than a car length adrift. It was a masterclass in psychological warfare as much as driving. And finally, on lap 13, the pressure cracked the Maserati. Collins surged ahead and claimed the lead, marking a remarkable charge from mid-pack to the front in just a handful of laps. A bold statement from the Englishman, and one that would not go unnoticed. Juan Manuel Fangio, ever the tactician, appeared to take a cue from the Englishman's charge. Perhaps stirred by Collins' rising pace, the Argentine shed the caution of the early laps and began to strike. With typical precision, he closed in on Eugenio Castellotti. And then, almost effortlessly, Fangio made his move. With a clean and calculated pass, he slipped by the Ferrari and moved up into third place. It was a clear sign. The maestro was done waiting. Peter Collins, having seized the lead with authority, now began to stretch his legs. Lap after lap, he widened the gap between himself and the rest of the field, carving out a comfortable cushion from the chaos behind. There was no sign of restraint in the Englishman's driving. His intent was clear from the outset. Full throttle, no compromise. It was a bold gamble under the brutal Argentine sun, but for now, it was paying off. Collins looked untouchable. By lap 15, the tenacious José Froilán González, not one to rest on his laurels, clawed his way back into the battle. With a swift and decisive move, he passed Harry Schell, reclaiming a hard-fought position. The Argentine was now up to 7th, steadily making his way through the pack in front of his home crowd. On lap 17, a moment of lapse in concentration cost Eugenio Castellotti dearly. As he pushed hard to maintain his position in 4th, the Italian's car slid off the track, a rare misstep that saw him lose precious time. The mistake allowed both Mike Hawthorne and Luigi Musso to slip past, dropping Castellotti down to 6th, a costly error that would be difficult to recover from. By lap 25, Juan Manuel Fangio finally made his move on Behra. With precise control and a keen sense of timing, the Argentine slid past the Frenchman to seize second place. The crowd must have sensed the shift. Fangio was now setting his sights firmly on the leader, Collins, with the pace of a man on a mission. Collins, who had been so dominant in the early stages of the race, suddenly veers into the pits. His face a picture of frustration, he desperately gestures to the mechanics, explaining that he's unable to engage a single gear. The team scrambles to investigate, but the damage is clear. The clutch has burned out almost entirely, and with that, Collins' race is over. But in the midst of the turmoil, the Argentine crowd erupts in joy. For now, the man they've been waiting for, the maestro Juan Manuel Fangio, takes the lead. The grandstands explode with emotion as the four-time world champion assumes the top spot. By lap 30, it's Luigi Musso who becomes the next victim of mechanical misfortune. The Italian, running strongly in the points, begins to lose pace, his car struggling under acceleration. The issue soon becomes clear. It's the clutch once again. Musso carefully coaxes the ailing Ferrari back to the pits, but there's no rescuing it. The team confirms the worst. His clutch has completely disintegrated. The Ferrari garage is starting to look more like a scene of quiet crisis than a championship outfit. Not long after Musso's retirement, disaster strikes yet again, this time for Mike Hawthorne. Running confidently in third, the Englishman suddenly begins to slow. The telltale signs are all too familiar. Slipping gears, erratic throttle response. It's the clutch. Just like Collins and Musso before him, Hawthorne is forced to limp back to the pits. There's no repair possible, no last-minute miracle. Another Ferrari falls, and with it, the team's hopes of a strong presence at the front begin to crumble. By lap 48, the relentless heat finally takes its toll on the veteran. José Froilán González, soaked in sweat and visibly drained, signals to the pit wall he's had enough. The cockpit feels like a furnace, and the strain is no longer bearable. He pulls into the pits, unfastens his belts, and hands the car over to the young and eager Alfonso de Portugal, who had been watching from the sidelines, helmet already on. Within seconds, the Spaniard climbs in and tears back onto the circuit, inheriting not only the machine, but also 7th position in the running order. Just one lap later, the Scuderia plays another card. Cesare Perdisa heads for the pits and climbs out, handing the wheel of his Ferrari to Peter Collins. The Englishman, already frustrated from his earlier retirement, now sees a second chance and grabs it with both hands. Back on track, Collins wastes no time. He quickly hunts down Harry Schell, who's been holding firm in 5th place. But Collins is in no mood for patience. A few laps of relentless pressure, a feint to the inside, and then, swift as a flash, he's through. But the fairy tale comeback of Peter Collins is short-lived. Despite his pace, it's clear he's struggling, cramped in a cockpit never built for his frame. Perdisa, considerably shorter than the lanky Briton, had his Ferrari tailored to his size. For Collins, the driving position is awkward, uncomfortable, and ultimately unbearable. So, Collins makes a quick decision, back to the pits. Waiting on the sidelines is a young man, Wolfgang von Trips. The German Count, poised and focused, finally receives the call he's been waiting for. After the heartbreak of Monza last year, where he never even made it to the starting grid due to a mechanical failure in practice, this is his moment. With a confident stride, von Trips takes the wheel. His Formula One debut is now officially underway. But the dream debut quickly turns into a test of nerve for von Trips. Slipping into the rhythm of a Grand Prix is no easy feat, especially not in the sweltering heat of Buenos Aires. It doesn't take long before Harry Schell, steady and relentless in his Scuderia Centro Sud Maserati, reels the young German in. With a well-timed move, the American regains the upper hand, reclaiming 5th place and reminding the rookie that Formula One is no place for a gentle introduction. But the tables turn once more, this time with fire in the eyes of the young German. Wolfgang von Trips, perhaps stung by the audacity of Schell's overtake, responds with a move of his own. Bold, clean and decisive. He sweeps past the American and reclaims 5th place in commanding fashion. It's a statement, loud and clear, from the debutant. A nobleman he may be, but on the racetrack, von Trips is proving he's no passenger. This is the spark of a future contender. Harry Schell, no stranger to grit, isn't about to be outdone by a Grand Prix rookie, no matter how noble his pedigree. The moment von Trips sweeps past, Schell plants his foot and begins a fierce retaliation. What follows is a spirited exchange, wheel to wheel, corner after corner. The two dance a high-speed duel through Buenos Aires, thrilling the crowd with every twist and surge. But experience counts for something, and in the end, it's Schell who edges ahead once more, reclaiming 5th place. The rookie had made his mark, but Schell had made his stand. From his position in 6th, Alfonso de Portago observes the battle ahead with calm calculation. The clash between Schell and von Trips is intense, dramatic, but also distracting, and the young Spaniard sees his moment. On lap 73, with effortless precision, he sweeps past the German, capitalizing on the chaos and moving up into 6th. A clean move, made with the cool instincts of a man who knows when to strike. On that very same lap, Sterling Moss, now running in a distant 9th, unleashes everything his Maserati has left. After the heartbreak at the start, where he was swallowed by the field almost instantly, the Englishman has been clawing his way back with quiet fury. And now, with nothing left to lose, he goes completely flat out. Through the sweeping corners and scorching straights of Buenos Aires, Moss dances with precision, and the stopwatch confirms it. 1 minute 44.7 seconds, the fastest lap of the race. Without warning, Eugenio Castellotti's Ferrari veers violently off the circuit. Spectators gasp as the red machine skips across the gravel and comes to rest by the barriers. The cause, a failed wheel joint, a critical failure that ended his race in a heartbeat. It's a cruel moment for the young Italian, who had fought valiantly through the heat and the chaos of Buenos Aires. Juan Manuel Fangio brings his Maserati across the line, first and unchallenged. The circuit explodes in celebration. Thousands rise to their feet as the great Argentine completes a flawless run, claiming his 4th victory on home soil. No wild battles, no last-minute heroics, just a master at work, controlling every corner, every lap, with absolute authority. Trailing Fangio by a margin of 18 seconds, Jean Behra brings his Maserati to the line in 2nd place, a performance that speaks volumes of his resilience and maturity behind the wheel. Not far behind, and met with a roar of approval from the home crowd, Carlos Menditagai claims 3rd. For the Argentine, this is more than just a podium. It is a moment of redemption. 1 year ago, fortune turned its back on him here. Today, he stands tall, completing an all-Maserati lockout of the podium in front of a rapturous Buenos Aires. Harry Schell follows in 4th, adding further gloss to the Italian marque's dominance. The American, driving for Scuderia Centro Sud, delivers a drive of consistency and composure. Ferrari, by contrast, endure a sobering afternoon. With mechanical failures crippling their front-runners, it falls to José Froilán González and the promising young Alfonso de Portago to salvage what they can. Sharing duties across the punishing distance, they bring their machine home in 5th, an honourable effort. The championship has only just begun, and the road ahead promises more challenges, more thrills, and more unforgettable moments. Next up is the 1957 Monaco Grand Prix, a race where the stakes are as high as the glitzy yachts lining the harbour. So, buckle up, because Monaco is coming, and you won't want to miss it. A big shout out to all our long-time subscribers and viewers. Thanks for joining us as we continue this journey through motorsport history.